Hello everyone. There's been quite a number of you that have expressed interest into the Poison Pathfinder, so I figured I'd make a little guide for you all. This video will be separated in chapters for where you really want to look in the guides, as some of you may be more experienced with the game. But I want to start off by saying that we also have a written version of this guide available on Mobalytics. This is for those of you that maybe just don't prefer video. I will say that this was written 3 days ago, so it's got a snapshot of my gear at that time, and it might not include everything fully in detail, but it should suffice for if you just want to have a little read over things. I have no idea what that was. In addition to that, for the more experienced players, and also for those of you maybe wanting to dive into the numbers, we have a POB available. And in this POB, at the top right, I have loadouts made for when you want to start using the build at level 39, when you want to switch to the Voltaxic Rift at level 79, and pretty much where I'm at currently in the game, so you have a snapshot of my gear. For those of you, I would recommend starting at level 39, of course, and when you go to items, here you'll be able to see some, not necessarily aspirational gear, but essentially what you want to aim for early game. You just want to get some resists and everything, but there'll be a nice little overview. We have it for level 79 as well, which is pretty much mapping. Everything's noted as such. But to dive into this with you guys, essentially early game, we want to make use of 3 uniques to augment our poison damage a lot. To start off with, that's going to be the Sliver Tongue bow. This bow, as you can see here, has quite high added flat fizz. I think on any other normal bow, this would be tier 1. It has a base crit chance that can go up to 6%, which is insane because that means you get 11%. And the rest of the stats is pretty much just amazing quality of life. You got a lot of leech, you get fork on every single arrow, as well as pierce, which doesn't mean a lot to us, but every little bit helps. Next to that, we're going to pair it with the Snakebite gloves. The main thing we want this for really is the +1 poison that they give, because with the Pathfinder Ascendancy, that means that we're going to have 2 extra poisons. I don't know why the game's freaking out, by the way. I think I'll just move away a little bit. There we go. And the 30% chance to poison might sound redundant, but the way poison works is that it also has a hit damage. And if we have a chance to poison, that means with a hit, we can apply 2 poisons at once, which is going to come in handy eventually. And lastly, we're going to get an Ice Fang Orbit as well at level 39. This has quite high flat fizz on it as well. And the main thing we really want this for is the chance to poison, as well as the increased magnitude of poison that you inflict. And this is just going to augment our early game a lot. Personally, I use these 3 uniques all the way up until tier 10 maps when I want to start making switches. So they'll last you a while, but if you find any upgrades along the way, of course, make sure to just grab those. And you'll be doing that all the way up until level 79. And at level 79 is when this bad boy comes in. The Voltaxic Rift Fanatic Bow. Now this one I have is a little crazy because it's got 3 sockets and it's pretty much perfect. But essentially what this bow does is it has a lot of lightning damage on it. It has some flat fizz and some chaos damage too, innately. And it converts all the lightning damage that you do into chaos damage, which opens up a lot of potential, right? It's very cool. The chaos damage from this also contributes to shock chance, which means that we're going to dedicate 2 abilities to doing shock as well on bosses. For that, we have Stormcaller Arrow and Voltaic Mark, and that's going to give you like 85% shock magnitude or something, which is crazy. One other big thing to keep in mind as well is that I would recommend corrupting this bow to try to get an extra socket. But if you're not that rich, maybe try not to do that, because you definitely want to have this rune in here, the Talisman of Thruldana, which gives us 1 extra poison. And on Pathfinder, that's probably 2 extra poisons. The reduced poison duration doesn't really matter that much to us because of just how many poisons we're applying. So it'll be a nice little damage boost. Together with the Voltaxic Rift, because we convert all the lightning damage to chaos damage, we want to grab our old infamous Hand of Wisdom in action. With this, we're going to get a little bit more chaos damage, and it's just going to help augment our poison really. It's better than these Snakebite gloves. So it's nothing too special. They should be pretty cheap now at least. Here as well, You want to try going for an extra socket because we have the Courtesan Manon's Rune of Cruelty, which are some new runes. I think they're like 10 to 15 exalt apiece, so do be careful with that. But they give 15% increased magnitude of damaging ailments you inflict, and if you have an extra socket, that's 30%. And that goes quite a long way for us, to be honest. What I also recommend early on, when you're making the switch to the Voltaxic Rift, is grabbing yourself a Ming's Heart. You'll probably want to grab one with a good corruption, but they'll be pretty cheap either way, and it's pretty amazing as it is. And as you can see here, I have a pretty damn awesome ring already, right? And which is mirrored with the Calandra's Touch that I have. So if we take this off, you can see our damage plummets quite a little bit on Poison Burst. But the Ming's Heart, this ring is so insane with how much it provides for us. You'll see it goes from 13k tooltip to pretty much almost 16k there, which is insane. So this is definitely going to help augment you a lot early game and get you through. And when you feel like you have enough damage and you want to focus more on defensives, get rid of it and get yourself a ring with lightning damage and increased chaos and just defensives essentially. Now, one thing I want to go into first immediately is that late game, you'll probably want to do a lot of Ascendancy passive swapping. As you can see here, I'm not actually spec'd into the extra poisons. And that's because I'm mainly doing mapping content nowadays, really. So I swapped out Plague Bearer for Herald of Plague, which, ironically enough, is a stronger version than the one we have in the Ascendancy. Here we have the most damaging poison you kill spreads to enemies within 1.5 meters. And Herald of Plague is 1.8 meters, as well as there's almost a 50% chance to hinder enemies when spreading. Also, this does scale with AoE, as you can see here. Well, I don't know if it does properly or not, but it's actually 3.6 meters, which is massive, right? So for mapping, I just went with extra passives as well as an ailment immunity. You're completely free to do what you want, really. But if you want to keep using extra poison and Plague Bearer instead, that works just as fine. I've done that for the longest of times. But I figured I'd explain that. You definitely want to go for the extra poisons if you're going to do any pinnacle bossing, because you can feel the damage difference when you have a lot more poisons than the enemy. Since we're on the tree, I might as well show you guys as well that they introduced a new feature in 0.3 where we can essentially lock our weapon set to the same weapon and quiver that we have. So you right click up here, lock to all weapon sets, and then when we swap, you can see that it's applied to the same weapon. Now this is particularly cool for us because it means that we have an entire part of the tree dedicated to getting shock magnitude and shock chance, so we can always permanently shock bosses. And the other side of the tree is pretty much all of our poison nodes, because you don't really need that when you're shocking, right? Another reason why this is super good is because there's a new Lineage gem, which I do think is very cheap, which is called Rigwald's Ferocity. What this does is it has slight drawbacks for each weapon set, but for the first weapon set, you get 20% more attack speed, and the second weapon set, you get 30% more damage with like a little less attack speed. But since we're playing poison, we want to scale our hit damage as much as we can, and that means that we're just going to get bigger poisons. It's very great. What we're mainly focusing on here in the tree as well is skill effect duration and magnitude of poison, essentially. You might find this a little odd that I've pathed here just to get these notes, but here you get both increased attack damage as well as increased skill effect duration, and you get quite a bit of it, to be honest. So they're very, very efficient. My tree might look a little crazier as well because I'm using a from nothing that is on Oasis, which means that I can kind of spend less points trying to grab some of these awesome nodes here. But mainly on the tree, we're focusing a lot on hit damage and our poisons. For jewels, one thing you specifically absolutely need, really, is not necessarily this Abyss Jewel, but the line on there that says recover 2% of maximum mana on kill. This is what's really going to sustain our mana long term, so you definitely want that. If you can get an Abyss Jewel like the one I have, that's amazing for damage. but you're probably going to want this on a Sapphire, and you can look in the POB for essentially some cheap lines that you would want to look together with it for. For the Emerald that I have in my tree, you can really get whatever with magnitude of poison on this to augment your damage. As you can see, I bought this really early on for pretty cheap, and I imagine it would be quite expensive now, having 8% extra attack speed like that. Now, as far as the gems go, let's go to a different area so I can show off some of the abilities maybe, and it'll be easier to explain that way. Let's go to the biggest area in the world, which is... Oh. I just click things. I think it's fine anyway. For our gems, our rotation is going to be extremely simple. Mostly we're just using Poison Arrow all the time. And for clear, we put down Toxic Growth, which normally takes a lot of time to go off on its own. But because we're using other poison abilities, it stores the poison. And with more stored poison, it goes off quicker. So we do this, one poison burst, and it blows up. I think that was actually because of the Wind Dancer, but that also applies poison. And this is pretty much our entire clear, just doing this the entire time. I'll take that support gem. But to get a little more into our gems, most of these are kind of untested because they added a lot of new stuff. But as you guys have seen, I think, at least, there's an Uber Arbiter kill that I did that I posted on YouTube. So whatever's here works well enough for that. For Poison Burst Arrow, we're grabbing a special Lineage gem called Arakali's Lust, which makes us deal 6% more damage with hits for each poison on the enemy. So a limit of 5 poisons, but we're always going to be doing 5 poisons, regardless of whether we take the Ascendancy node or not. We've got Deadly Poison, which gives us more magnitude of poison. Profanity, which lets us consume a corpse to deal 30% more chaos damage. And we're essentially just, when you're mapping, as you can see here, it just eats a corpse that's on the ground. You never really have to worry about it. We've got Escalating Poison, which gives us +1 poison stack. And as I talked about, the weapon set skill gem, which is the Rigwald's Ferocity. For Toxic Growth, we grab Cadence, which means that the more we use it, the more attack speed we have. If you use it more than 6 times, I think, in a specific time frame, then you can't use it anymore, but we're never really hitting that limit. We've got Long Fuse, which increases the detonation time, but makes us deal more damage with it. Deadly Poison for magnitude of poison, and Projectile Acceleration just so we can clear a lot faster. Naturally, you're going to want projectile speed on your quiver as well. I have that on one here, but not this one. And for clear, it makes a massive difference because we can just do bang, 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 bang to clear pretty much the entire time, right? I've got Herald of Plague because I'm in my mapping setup at the moment. We've got Vine Arrow. Vine Arrow is really only used for when we're bossing. So we'll drop 1 Vine Arrow down, and just like these can be poisoned as well. So you'll drop it on the boss, and where the impact of your poison burst happens, it hits the Vine Arrow. It'll poison the Vine Arrow, and it does massive damage. For this, we'll have Deliberation for more damage, Swift Affliction for faster damage, Prolonged Duration so they last longer, and Overabundance so that we can actually place down 2 of them. We've got Toxic Domain. Now this, I think, is quite strong, though I'm not entirely sure how it fully works. Toxic Domain means that we leave a little domain on the floor, and it augments our bow, as you can see, which looks super cool. It makes our skills cost a little more, and they attach a toxic pustule that can be poisoned, similar to Toxic Growth, I guess, on the enemy itself. And it deals massive damage, because it auto-detonates after 113,000 poison damage, right? And it grants up to 300% more explosion damage. But I'm not entirely sure how it works. I think it works because I have been using it. So that's that. Stormcaller Arrow and Voltaic Mark are pretty simple. Stormcaller Arrow just goes off after a determined amount of time. We can't really see because it shoots too far. There you go. But this pretty much like guarantees a shock and shock duration with the quality that it has. We put the shock support on this, lasting shock for a longer shock, and compressed duration for less skill effects, which technically only affects the arrow duration for when the thunder comes off. We've got Voltaic Mark, and this essentially just increases the shock magnitude on the enemy for us. We've got Prolonged Duration on this for a longer mark duration. Potent Exposure, though I don't think this actually works. And Lightning Mastery just for an extra level, but that doesn't matter at all either. And the bottom two is just some defensive spirits that we have. Ghost Dance for our Energy Shield and Wind Dancer for evasion, with Compressed Duration on Ghost Dance for a quicker time on when we get the little shrouds back. And for Wind Dancer, we just have Maim, Blind, and Magnified Area for when we get hit, that hopefully they don't hit us again, essentially. And that's essentially it when it comes to the skills. Now I can show you guys a quick little mapping run to see what this build is actually like, and that's it from that point on.